everyone, and welcome to This One's Dedicated To. I'm Jennifer Ziegler.
And I'm Chris Barton, and today we are joined by Evan Griffith, the author of the middle grade novel Manatee Summer. Welcome, Evan.
Hi, Evan.
Hey, Chris and Jenny, thank you so much for having me.
Oh, we're so glad you're here. So to kick us off, would you mind reading aloud the dedication in Manatee Summer?
I would be happy to. It is very, very short and simple. It says, "For Arthur."
Who is Arthur, and why is this book dedicated to Arthur?
Yeah, so Arthur was my grandfather, my mom's dad, who I called Papa. And when I was growing up, spent a lot of time with my Nana and Papa, going over to their house. There's a good chunk of childhood where they actually lived just a block away from where I lived with my parents, and my brother, and so I was always rollerblading over there, and easy kind of built-in babysitting service for when my parents were busy. So I spent a lot of time with them. And there are several kind of loosely autobiographical elements in Manatee Summer. It's about this boy, growing up in Central Florida, in a hometown, much like my own hometown, although I fictionalized it a little bit. And one of the elements that I drew from my own memory, from my own childhood, is that during one of his summer breaks, Peter, the main character, finds himself in the position of his grandfather, who has Alzheimer's, has moved in with Peter and his mom. And Peter is in the position of taking care of his grandfather this summer, because his grandfather's has pretty rapidly progressing Alzheimer's. And this is a for a 11-year-old boy, a very confusing and strange and surreal experience, particularly because for Peter, his grandfather, has always been they've always been very, very close. His grandfather has always been a source of strength and support and love for him. And so Peter's kind of witnessing his grandfather go through these really confusing changes, and also kind of experiencing that reversal of the caretaker role, right? This figure that had been providing so much care is now in the position of needing care.
Did your family know as you're making the book that you were going to dedicate it to your grandfather? At what point did your family find out?
Yeah, they did not know. They found out when the book came out, and I think as much as this was for Papa, this was also for my mom, because she was very, very close to her dad, and the last several years of his life, she put forward a Herculean effort in taking care of him, and witnessing that was also something that made a pretty profound impact on me as a kid. And I wanted to honor him. I also wanted her to have, like, in the small way, to see that his legacy, his impact on me and our generation and my cousins is still sort of being held and acknowledged. And so that was a surprise for her when the book came out.
How are you and Peter similar? Where's
Hmm.
the Venn diagram overlap there?
I'm currently working on like what will be my third published middle grade novel, and it's now, having crafted these different, middle grade age protagonists. I'm noticing that I think I tend to take an element of myself, an element of my experience, and sort of like grow a character from that like differs from me in certain ways, but has this sort of core connection. But that core connection is different for each of my main characters. The difficulty that Peter has, Peter is a very he experiences emotions like very in a very strong way. He's often very overwhelmed by his emotions, and he has a hard time regulating them. And a lot of his emotions are tied to this kind of belief that he has that he's very responsible for everyone around him and their well-being, and that he feels a lot of weight on his shoulders. And that was something that I felt a lot as a kid. And so just his sort of emotional landscape and the intensity of his emotions, and a lot of the more internal sections of the book where it's just sort of about what's going on in his mind and his heart, felt journalistic, for me.
Well, what about the manatee aspect? Have you seen or interacted with manatees? Are those part of your story as well?
Yeah, so I when I was a kid, for when we moved my grandfather in with us, we had to move houses. We needed a house that was accessible to somebody with mobility challenges and all of that. So we moved into a new house, and that house was in this little neighborhood by the Indian River in Florida, and there was a canal that ran into the neighborhood from the river. And I used to go down to the banks of the canal sometimes. And, when I needed to be alone or was frustrated with my parents or whatever was going on, just go down to the water and sit. And I often saw a herd of manatees in that canal. And so I would just sit by the banks and watch them. I had to do some research for this book because there's a lot of like manatee conservation information and some, there's some science in here. And so I actually returned to Florida, where I haven't lived in many, many years, and researched manatees, spoke to some experts, but I also swam with manatees, which was super magical. And I won't give too much away, but has found its way directly into the story as well.
So one last question about the dedication. At what point when you were making the story did you know you're going to dedicate it to your grandfather?
I don't remember exactly, but I think it was pretty early on. Manatee Summer actually started first it started as a poem. Like I wrote a poem about this childhood memory of seeing manatees in the canal by my house. And that poem sort of like reactivated all of these like childhood memories for me. And I wrote a short story about these two friends, Peter and Tommy, who it was one scene, it was them encountering a manatee for the first time. And from there, I was like, I started developing this into a novel, and I didn't approach it in a very structured way. I just started writing scene after scene, and I found that this grandfather character kept coming in and kept coming in. And so very early on in this sort of expansion of that short story into a novel, like the grandfather relationship just became really important. And I think I knew at that point, like, this is who, this book is going to be dedicated to.
And I think I read that Mary Quattlebaum might have had something to do.
Oh, it absolutely had something. Yeah, she was my advisor at Vermont College of Fine Arts when I was there as a student, and she read the short story and really encouraged me to develop it further. And I didn't get to it right away, so she kept nudging me and kept reminding me. And at a certain point, I was like, if Mary believes in this much, I trust her instincts. So I'm gonna give this a go. And I am glad that she nudged me.
Thank you, Mary. No one wants to disappoint Mary.
No, it would be a terrible thing.
Right.
That I don't think I had a friend
The
that understood me to that level and was able to like show up for me, and that like, I think Tommy is like a true blue, like he's a really good friend for Peter, and they're a really good match in a lot of ways. And so I think that was a little bit of wish fulfillment for me, sort of writing that character.
Right. And you can go up to people now and go, will you be my Tommy?
Yeah, like here's the manual for what I need in a friendship. Will you read it and then support me in this way? Thank you.